Hello, welcome to this week's Ask Anwen, and we've got a really important question this week, and it ties into the theme of this week, focusing on mental health. It was World Mental Health Day on the 10th of October, so it feels pretty apt to be focusing on this question that I've got today. So the question is, how can we best support the mental health of line managers? I think if I'm thinking about my own experiences within organisations, also seeing a lot of the information that's shared more broadly around mental health in the workplace, a lot of it is focused on individuals, and that's totally fine. Focusing on the needs of individual employees within the organisation really does matter, because reality is mental health is a very individual thing and different people will need different things. My concern here, though, is sometimes we don't look at it necessarily through the lens of what it's like to lead in organisations and the impact that that has on mental health. We ask a lot of leaders. We need to. Their role is really important. But doing leadership really well comes at a cost. It comes at a cost in terms of how much you need to think about others, how much you need to focus on others. And although that is wonderful and you can get a huge amount of payback for that, it also can be challenging for your mental health if that's not being looked after really well. And when we have leaders whose mental health isn't in a great place, we know that's going to have a knock-on effect on our teams, on their people. There's a really interesting stat that Better Up put together, and that's team performance drops by 23% when the leader has low resilience. So when we're seeing negative impacts on leaders' well-being, their mental health, we know that this has an impact on the performance of the team. So by paying attention to leaders specifically when you're thinking about mental health will pay off more broadly. I'm sure we've all worked for somebody who we know is struggling, who we know is just not quite in the right place. And that will have an impact. I know it's had an impact on me before, and I know it's had an impact on my team when I've been leading them and maybe I wasn't in the best place. So paying attention to how we support leaders to look after their mental health will pay off for our organisations overall, let alone doing the right thing for individuals. Because quite honestly, these leaders, they are employees of your business too. So taking it from a perspective of what does it mean for them, mental health support in the workplace, will help them to feel like you are actually considering them and their needs. So I've got 3 areas that I think you can kind of channel and think about and consider your support for leaders and their mental health. So first up, we are going to look at support. What does support mean when it comes to mental health for leaders in your organisation? So what I mean by this isn't about, what access to things they have. We'll cover that next because that is important too. But first of all, I think it's really critical that the support comes by saying out loud, leaders, you're important to us, your mental health is important to us, and we want to help you with that. Just taking that step of showing the support and showing the importance of them and their mental health is a huge step, because we're not talking about that nearly enough. And therefore, by putting that really direct message out there, we start to open the door then to go, oh, actually, maybe this is something I need to pay attention to as well for myself as an individual if the organisation is seeing that as important. So the support comes by opening up that door to conversations about mental health for leaders, by recognising the impact that they have on the organisation's mental health and well-being levels, and the critical role that they play in that will help to emphasise the value and necessity of paying attention to positive mental health for them, for themselves, and also what that means for their team. So paying attention here is about saying it out loud, but then the things that are going to come next are around really putting that into practice. This isn't about lip service. It shouldn't be about lip service. If it is going to be about lip service, then just don't bother saying anything, because that can be more detrimental than actually saying you want to support people and that there is no support in place. So next up is resources. So what you need to be thinking about here is providing access to support for mental health and positive well-being for your leaders through that lens of them being a leader. So not just the broader individual parts of things, but actually giving them resources about what it means for them as a leader. It's challenging to lead people. It's not easy. It's amazing and you get a huge amount back from it, but it's not easy. So make sure that your resources to support mental health and positive well-being reflect the realities of the role that they have. And some of that is about making sure that they have capacity within their role to pay attention to these topics. What I found really useful was when people around me would talk about mental health within the workplace, and that would encourage me to talk about mental health within the workplace. What I would also then do is do that with my team. I might not always share my story around mental health, but I would share videos, topics, articles about things relating to mental health or well-being overall, and that would encourage conversations. So if you have leaders who aren't sure how to get into this space of talking about mental health, they don't have to step into that vulnerability place until they're ready to, but helping them have access to resources they can share with their team and that they can access themselves from a leadership perspective will really help them there. And finally, the environment. So we can say the support's there, talk about how important it is, give them access to the resources, and then the environment that you are working in, they are working in, just doesn't reflect what you're saying. You need to have those leaders that you're talking to about their mental health being looked after by their leaders in the same way. If you want line managers to look after their teams, your line managers need to be looked after too by their senior leaders. Take care of their leadership as well and their mental health at that senior level, but also be clear about helping those leaders to support your line managers so that they can do that in the right way. Role modeling is so important, and as line managers you can role model the well-being messaging and the mental health messaging within the team, but the environment also needs to be there for those line managers. They can't feel like they're doing it all on their own. So ensure that those line managers have leaders as well who are able to support them with their mental health. Are one-to-ones being held to start with? Are those one-to-ones discussing well-being, and are they discussing that really well? And if those senior leaders feel uncomfortable, then you need to be looking at how you support those senior leaders to get more comfortable having those conversations and looking at how they can support their team, because ultimately it's impacting on the capabilities potentially of that line manager, but it's certainly going to be impacting on the performance of the team. Along with that role modeling, it's about open conversations across your organisation, creating an environment where actually we don't need to shy away from mental health conversations. We don't need to shy away from well-being. We all have mental health. It's just sometimes it's not in the same place for everybody. But normalising that, just like if we break a leg, we don't think of that as weakness. We need to change how those conversations are happening in our organisation. And that will make it much easier for line managers also to address that and to have those conversations in the organisation. So creating an environment where that can happen is really valuable. So those are the 3 ways that I think you can really take action on improving well-being and mental health support for line managers in your organisation. Make sure the support's there. Give them the resources that really centre around them and their experience as line managers, and look at working on the environment that they're in, creating those role models, opening up those conversations so that there can be a real positive impact on mental health in the workplace. If you've got any other tips or ideas that you think would be useful to share, then please add those into the comments. It'd be really great to consider that further. I've written a blog on this broad theme of well-being and thinking about well-being for leaders in your strategy. So I will also put the link to that in the comments. If you've got any questions that you'd like my perspective on or a second opinion on, then feel free to submit. Again, the link to that will be in the comments, or just drop me a message. Okay, thanks. Bye now.